Welcome to Abstract Audio, the podcast presenting life as an abstract art form. The show that encourages you to perceive beyond the tangible, to extract the infinite from the finite, to see with the mind what you cannot physically see with the eyes. Oh, it's an emancipation. It's an exploration into areas usually overlooked. Explore with me on today's episode. All right. Welcome back, potty people. You see what I did there? Potty people. because it's a podcast and it's a party, because it's fun. Well, if you don't get it now, you probably will later. Either way, I'm glad you joined us. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in, you guys. So this is season 2, episode 11 of the Abstract Audio Podcast, and I'm your host, Amber Janae. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Amber, what's next? Is it even possible to top these deep dives into respect and peace and death we did all these last few episodes? Or maybe you're just thinking, is she really trying to make that potty people joke work? Who is she, Eddie Murphy? Well, today, the answer is yes. And no, actually it's both, because we're not just topping it, guys. Today we're tying it all together with an abstract look at the power of yes and no. Sure, these words might be small, but just like all our other topics, they pack a huge punch when it comes to shaping our lives, our relationships, our society, and our peace of mind. So let's get into it. And maybe, just maybe, we'll stir up some controversy while we're at it. So to start, let's rewind the tape a bit. Back to when we were just tiny, drooling new humans learning to navigate the world with the most basic tools we have, our words. And if you think about it, some of the very first words most of us ever learn are yes and no. It's almost as if we're born understanding that life is going to come at us with choices, and we'll need to be ready to either embrace them or shut them down. And these small little words are like training wheels of our language. Base level, I think we feel like yes just gets you more, right? More mashed bananas, more tickles, more of whatever good thing you're after. And no kind of stops the nonsense. Like when dad, for those of us that have them, tries to make you eat broccoli or insists it's bedtime, right? It's true. These two little words set the whole stage for how we interact with our realities. They're simple, binary, and so powerful. And ironically, with them, we navigate through a world that's anything but simple and binary. And even as adults, we're still using these same basic tools to negotiate the complexities of life. When you think about it, yes and no, sure, they're primal and basic, but they're literally the key to accepting or rejecting the circumstances that shape our lives. And it almost seems as if all our lives, we've never been able to escape it. Slogans like, no means no, say yes to the dress, yes we can, shout out the Obamas, yes sir, yes ma'am, say no to drugs, no diggity, no doubt, hell, no diddy. All these ways we're told to use our two most important words. All these companies, these ads, these campaigns trying to sway us one way or another. And yet we still downplay their effectiveness, which is why we're talking about it today. You know how they say words are power? Depending on what you believe, you may have even heard that words are spells. It's no coincidence that we spell words. It's a form of magic, energy, unconscious affirmations that we speak into our lives. And even if you're not into the more mystical side of things, I'm sure you've heard that the pen is more powerful than the sword. But how can we reclaim that power that's rightfully ours? And how can we use it to work for us? Well, our ability to consent is the first thing that comes to my mind, personally. Now, consent. That's a word that's been getting a lot of airplay lately. I mean, not as much as demure, of course, but for good reason. The power of consent is at the core of human dignity and autonomy. When we say yes, for instance, we're giving permission. We're opening that door with a golden key. And rightfully so. I mean, it's the golden word. The word that starts adventures and makes life feel like a spontaneous road trip with your best friends. Until you realize that you've said yes to a week of sleeping in a tent with no running water. Oof. Yes is that word we're all taught to embrace head on, right? Say yes to opportunities. Say yes to new experiences. Say yes to love, to life, hell, to everything. But I always say anything that can apply to everything can't be a good thing. I mean, think about it. How often do we say yes because we actually want to? And how often do we do it because we feel like we should? Because we feel obligated? Man, to be totally honest here, there's something inherently seductive about yes, okay? It's like that cool kid in high school who always knew where the best parties were. I mean, I didn't really get invited to too many parties growing up, but I'd assume it's like that. Nonetheless, saying yes feels like an invitation to belong, to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And it's not just in social situations either. Philosophically, saying yes can be seen as an affirmation of life itself. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existential king of brooding thoughts, would say that by saying yes, we're asserting our freedom. We're acknowledging that life is absurd and meaningless, and yet here we are, choosing to say yes to it anyway. It's a big middle finger to nihilism. Or maybe it's more like a thumbs up, depending on how you look at it. But let's not get carried away in all the gold and optimistic sparkles here, okay? Because we all know there's a much darker side to this seemingly innocent word. Yes can be a trap. A slippery slope into a life that's not really yours. I'll ask again, how many times have you said yes when you really wanted to say no? Maybe you agreed to that extra work project because you didn't want to disappoint your boss. Or you said yes to a second date because you didn't want to seem rude. Or you're just an introvert like me who agreed to go out in the moment, and a week later when the day comes, you're paralyzed with social anxiety and would rather stay home in your fuzzy socks. It's funny though, isn't it? Because yes is supposed to be this word that empowers us. But sometimes it can feel more like a chain binding us to obligations and expectations, taking it back to episode 1, that we never even wanted in the first place. Now, I'm not saying yes is inherently bad. Far from it. Saying yes can open up a world of possibilities, obviously, and bring a kind of growth and joy that's hard to find when you're constantly playing it safe. But for real, y'all, are you saying yes because you truly want to embrace what's being offered? Or are you saying it out of fear? Fear of missing out, FOMO. Fear of rejection, fear of confrontation. I mean, fear can definitely be warranted at times, though. We all see the niggas out here smacking bitches like Will Smith for saying no to something as simple as exchanging numbers, okay? That's just the reality we live in. I feel like that's as good a lead-in as any. So let's switch gears and talk no. Ugh. Forgive me if I cringe when I say that word. As a parent, I'm flashing back to my son's terrible twos. Whew, that's all I used to hear. Anyway, as my son could probably tell you, when we say no, we're drawing a line, establishing a boundary. And that's hard for a lot of people. And while yes is often celebrated as the word of golden opportunity, no sometimes gets the short end of the stick. Say no and suddenly you're seen as the bad guy. You're difficult, you're uncooperative, even disrespectful, especially if you're Black. or a woman, or both. But let's pause for a moment here and really ask ourselves why that is. Why is no so often taken as an insult, a slap in the face, a personal attack, rather than a simple assertion of someone's will? Not to say free will is a thing, but that was another episode. To answer that, let's circle back to some of our earlier topics. Entitlement and expectations, free will or standstill, or even to put it more plain, episode 2, acceptance and individuality. Does the societal pressure to say yes reflect a deeper philosophical conflict between conformity and individuality? You bet your sweet ass it does. Let's face it, we live in a world that's obsessed with positivity and opportunity, or at least a country that does. This much we know to be true. So of course, yes is seen as the gateway to success, adventure, and fulfillment. Look, say yes enough times, rub elbows or fuck with enough rich people, and supposedly you'll find yourself in a land of milk and honey, with opportunities knocking down your door. No, on the other hand, is seen as a roadblock, an end to possibilities. It's viewed as a refusal to play the game, to participate with the collective pursuit of growth, success, or whatever goal society is deemed worthy for the time being. And we all know what happens when you try to go against the norm. You get shunned, you get guilted, you get humiliated, assassinated, or worse. I mean, I don't really know what could be worse than assassination, but I'm sure there's something. But that's how you know the system is broken, right? Because in reality, saying no is often the most authentic expression of individuality there is. When you say no, you're exercising the right to choose, to protect your time, your energy, your mental space, your peace. And what does that say if they don't want you to do that? Let's face it, in a society that values conformity and success, individuality, like we said a couple episodes back, can be seen as a threat. This is where the friction comes from. Because when somebody says no, it's like they're just not being a team player. They're challenging the idea that everyone should be on the same page, heading in the same direction, which is oftentimes off a cliff. Just sheep's grazing in the same pasture, And that no to the wrong person or entity can a lot of times feel like rejection, and not just of the request, but of the person or thing making it. So yeah, it's a lot bigger and deeper than just hurt feelings out here. No can feel like a complete disruption of social contracts and inferred obligations. When somebody says no, it breaks the unspoken rule that we should all be working towards the same goals, or at least pretending to, right? It's that reminder that we're not all the same, even though it feels like it sometimes. That we all have different priorities, different values, different needs. And that difference can be unsettling for the unhealed. And this just hit me like recently. The more I say the actual word, but no kind of feels empty, doesn't it? Kind of lonely too. Like when you realize there's no more of something, you get a little sad, right? Especially if it's those leftovers you've been saving up. Or talking about death, when someone is no more, you feel their absence, right? So there's also this inherent emotional quality that comes with it. And there's this cultural element at play. Because in many cultures, saying no can be seen as rocking the boat. It's viewed as putting your own needs above the group's, which can come off as selfish or disrespectful. Sound familiar? And I know all the moms out there can relate to always putting someone's feelings above your own and feeling guilty when you put yourself first. I also know a lot of moms who knock the taste out your mouth just for telling them no in the wrong tone of voice. But regardless of what kind of culture you come from, more individualistic or otherwise, no is still pretty frowned upon across the board because it disrupts that flow of mindless yeses that grease the wheel of social interaction. Whether it's refusing a favor or turning down an invitation or declining an opportunity, no is just seen as no good. You hear it all the time, right? the worst thing they can say is no. Psychologically, and in the same breath as yes, the fear of saying no often comes from this place of wanting to be liked, accepted, validated, whatever. But child, let me tell you, I gave that up a long time ago. Because that can lead to this kind of internal conflict where we're constantly torn between what we want to do and what we feel we should do. And let me tell you something else. That is a one-way ticket to resentment city, my friend. Instead, through my recent experiences, I've actually run across this theory called burnt toast. You may have heard of it. It's this phenomenon that suggests that setbacks, could be something as small as burning your toast in the morning, may actually cause us to slow down, redirect, and possibly avoid greater harm. In life, we often run into these moments, these small setbacks that feel like nuisances in the moment, but might actually be protecting us from something way worse. Think of it like this. When you say yes to something that's not quite right, you probably are setting yourself up for bigger failure later on. But when you have the wisdom and self-knowledge to say no, to recognize the burnt toast for what it is, a warning, a chance to pivot, you can a lot of times avoid greater damage. So what's the real point I'm making here? No is not the enemy of peace like society would have you believe, guys. In fact, it's a crucial part of it. Obviously, peace isn't about saying yes to everything and everyone, despite how many movies and TV shows they seem to make about doing just that. I'm looking at you, Yes Day. Good movie. It's a good movie. But it's about creating a life that really aligns with your values and your boundaries. Check out season 1 episodes Boundaries or Brevity for more on the topic. But like we said last episode, peace needs war. And sometimes peace means saying no. A life filled with yeses you don't mean is a life lived for others, not for yourself. And trust me, nobody wants to kick it with a yes man. And the people that do have super fragile egos. And this is coming from a former people pleaser. No is the word that allows you to protect your peace, to say, this is who I am and this is what I need. So say it and say no to peer pressure. So who are you? I won't even frame it as an optimist or pessimist kind of thing, but are you a yes person or are you a no person? And more importantly, are you happy with that? Because at the end of the day, the power of yes and no are really about the power to choose. Still on the fence with the free will thing, but it's about the power to live your life on your terms, to the best of your abilities anyway, to make decisions that reflect who you are and what you value. So next time you're faced with a decision, ask yourself, does subscribing to the Abstract Audio Show really mean I get exclusive content and a community of like-minded weirdos to talk to all the time? In this case, the answer is undoubtedly yes. So be sure to check in with us online and on socials. And until next time, guys, walk in your power and don't forget, always appreciate the abstract in your life.